Life Today Live. Hope you're doing well out there. We've got an interesting topic today. This is a tough topic. I'll just be honest with you. And if you've ever lost anyone or faced a serious diagnosis medically yourself or with your family, you're going to relate to this. I know, unfortunately, I will. But what do you do when you get that terrible diagnosis? As Christians, we've got our pat answers, but I got to tell you, sometimes those feel like they're not enough. That's the way I feel anyway. But don't take my word for it. I've got someone who deals with it a lot, ministers at a church. Pastor Tyrus Hinton is with me. He is an associate pastor at World Overcomers Christian Church. He has also written this book called Baby Steps, I'm Diagnosed, Now What? And that is the question when you're facing those tough circumstances. So I don't know where you're at. I don't know what you've faced. But if this is something that has impacted you or someone you know, go ahead and share this interview right now, or tag somebody, wherever you're at. This is going to help you, I think. So, Pastor Tyrus, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Randy. How about yourself?
Oh, man, I'm doing all right. I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us. Let's just start at the top a little bit. Give us an idea of sort of the ministry that you find yourself in, because it's a little unique and it's a little difficult.
Yeah, so I'm Tyrus Hinton, associate pastor at World Overcomers Christian Church here in the Research Triangle Park area, 2 locations. And my ministry is pastoral care, just in a different way. So as you know, there's so many different aspects of pastoral care, but the Lord has been kind enough to me to allow my family to experience some very serious devastation with the loss of our son, diagnosed with AML leukemia at 16 months, then had an 8-month battle. He then gained his wings afterwards. The blessing for us is that we look at it as victory because he gained his wings after his 8-month battle. So that's what we talk about a lot. And I wrote a book called Baby Steps to really help families focus on how to get over that initial diagnosis. Randy, I'm not sure if you know or not, but I've been diagnosed with cancer myself. 2 months after I released my first book, Baby Steps, I'm Diagnosed, Now What? So once I was diagnosed, I had to go right back to that same resource and figure out what steps do I take now and how do I overcome this. Now, being a man of faith, people of faith, we believe in the scriptures. We understand the scriptures. We believe in the life in the scriptures. At times, though, we still require a practical resource that can help us get through these times. So that's what Baby Steps is about. That's what I'm about, just being that arm, that support, that ear, that understanding individual that's in the room, because that we do have many family and friends that will come and visit with us at all times, but they won't necessarily have the practical answers. They'll have all the biblical answers, but not practical answers. And that's where Tyrus Hinton comes in.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, now this is, I hope I asked this question in the right way, but I do want to ask it. And understand, I don't know if you know, I lost my sister. She was 40. She battled cancer for 7 years. And going through that, you see all the different ways that people cope with it. My parents, my brother-in-law, her 3 children, and I know we all cope in our own ways. I noticed when you talk about your son, he was 2 years old when he passed away. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you use language like gained his wings. You actually said that the Lord was kind enough to let you go through that, which is not something most people would say. Why do you choose to look at it that way? Is that a coping, or is there something else going on that makes you deal with a very, very difficult situation the way that you do?
Well, Randy, if we're very honest, we're people of faith at our core. So while we do realize that we're going to have some issues as on earth and in life, I think our outlook has to be one of victory. And that's just how I was raised in a very conservative Christian home. We've experienced a lot, I've been through a lot. And when you've watched your loved ones suffer as we have, as my wife and I did, and my two smaller children at that time, you can only look for victory in situations like that. You can only look for, like, God, I need you to do something. And what scripture do I have? What scripture do I often fall back on? Is Jesus Christ himself. The Bible says that he was a man of sorrow, acquainted with grief. So in other words, Jesus had some encounters, some experiences. He lost some friends. He had a touch of grief on his own, but then he didn't live there. And that's kind of where I am. That's kind of how I maintain, how I keep moving, is I don't live there. I could. Wow. Oh, trust me, my friend. I could. But I
Yeah.
choose not to, because I'm like, Lord, if my son was still alive, how much more would we have to deal with? How much more would he have to encounter? How much, every day I have to think about the fact that clinically I'm in remission. I know in my life, in my faith, I believe I'm healed. But clinically, I'm in remission. So annual checkups, and every 6 months, every symptom means this, every symptom means that. And when I say he's gained his wings, I'm like, Lord, thank you. He doesn't have to deal with that anymore. He doesn't have to deal with that. So if I can get people to kind of take on that perspective, which will be very challenging at first. That's why we call it baby steps. It's very challenging at first, but I'm telling you, there's a victory in it. And that's why I say gained his wings. I can't look at it as death, because I don't sorrow as those that have no hope. I have hopes that I'll see my son again. I have hopes. I'm telling you, Randy, I have hopes that I will see him. I might not recognize him because he's not, but
I think you'll recognize him, but there's a lot we don't know. Let me ask you this, because I tell you what, watching my sister go through her suffering and then passing away, it forced me to examine: do I believe what I say I believe? Those scriptures that you quote, do I actually believe them? What did your loss, your personal battles? I mean, you've had to stare death in the face. Did it force you to think about heaven and eternity and things like that?
well, Randy, in our conservative Christian home, our focus was heaven. That's what it was all about. My mom had her eyes fastened on seeing Jesus from the time I could remember. There was nothing greater than to see Jesus. It was all about seeing. Amen. It was all about seeing it. That's why we live the life that we live, so that we can enjoy eternity with him. And I personally haven't quite gotten away from that. And even when my son, my mom was alive during that time when my son was battling cancer, she kept that before me. She says, Tyrus, we're living to live again. We're living to live again. This is the hope that we're expecting. So you have to keep that in mind. I'm like, Mom, but he's just a baby. She says, yeah, but guess what? The quicker he gets there, the better it is for him. The less time he has to endure hardness and trials and things on the earth. And it's just a perspective that I have inside. It lived with me then, and here it is 20 years later. It's still living with me right now, because as I had to stare death in the face, I stared it in the face with hope, with saying, you know what? I told my wife and my children when they gathered around the bedside, I said, listen, this is a win-win situation for me. To live, you'll see a miracle. To die, you'll see a miracle. Live, you'll see me here with you. We'll keep on rejoicing. To die, you'll know that I lived a life so that I could see Jesus in the end. So that's kind of how I balance it. That's how I see it. That's why my stance is how it is. That's why my joy is the way it is. That's why I'm smiling like I am, because it's nothing that you can make up. This has to be internal. It has to be something that you really believe in, what you're preaching, what you're reading, and what you're sharing with others.
Yeah, 100%. It does force it. So going through that, being in a pastoral role, I know that that's put you in a lot of positions where people who are diagnosed, who are facing loss, who are facing questions, they come to you. Talk a little bit about the ministry that's kind of come out of that.
Oh, yeah. So The good part about baby steps is, and I say baby steps because it is a ministry in itself. So when I think about baby steps, it gives me the opportunity to serve at different extended stays where there are a lot of families at, right? So there's Ronald McDonald House, and we'll go there and we'll serve, we cook and prepare meals, and that's a ministry in itself. And it allows me to talk to parents who have children that are staying at local hospitals that have recently been diagnosed with various kinds of pediatric cancer.
Mm.
What do I get to do? I get to walk them through the step by step, the emotional side of it. And the reason why I choose the emotional side is because according to Proverbs 11:30, he that winneth souls is wise. So everyone that is going through this is not necessarily a believer. Every time I'm called to the hospital, it's not necessarily for a believer.
Mm-hmm.
Times it's for a member who has a friend, or a member who has a family member, or a member who knows someone who is dealing with these kind of situations. When I get to the bedside, it gives me an opportunity just to talk about, hey, let's process this. Let's talk about what we're going to do from this point on. So we talk about listening. Okay, what are the doctors saying? Do you understand what the doctors are saying to you? Do you comprehend everything they're saying to you? And my purpose for those questions are very intentional. Do you know what medications you're on? Do you know the protocol? Has that been established? What steps are we taking? And I kind of walk through these processes with the family because that gives me what to pray for when I leave their presence. It gives me what to lean on the Lord for when I leave their presence. So we take care packages, we take resources, but I kind of really walk them through baby steps. I talk about, okay, have you managed to reach out to any of the other families here? Have you created a new network of friends? Have you started thinking about how you'll navigate? I talk to the families. I spend time with them. I talk about changing the routine because, as we both know, Randy, with any diagnosis, your routine changes. Your whole life changes. I'm sure not just the individual is sick, but the whole family now becomes sick because we're all a part of it, as you experienced with your sister. But we walk you through it and just say, hey, listen, this is how we get through it. On the tough days, we go through it with you. We don't walk in when you're quiet, we're quiet. When you're loud, you're loud, we're loud. When you cry, we cry. In other words, we become all things to all men so that we might win some to Christ. So the ultimate goal at the end of my ministry is for everyone to come to know Jesus, have the blessed hope and assurance that.
Losing the audio.
Because remember, we're going to win either way. Whether we win by getting our wings or whether we win by getting up and walking away, we've had someone to walk with us through the process. So that's where I am with the ministry.
Okay, great. We're having a little bit of some audio issues. It's just on the internet connection, so people hang with us here because this is important. Tyrus, again, we're talking to Pastor Tyrus Hinton. He's written this book called Baby Steps. I'm Diagnosed Now What? And he's dealing with some really serious situations on a regular basis. Tough things. And by the way, that book is available if you want to get it. If you need to give it to somebody, do go to the website. The website is, babystepsthebook.com. So feel free to go there. You can read more about that and let it help you if you're in this kind of situation. Pastor Tyrus, you mentioned that you oftentimes go into a hospital or a home, another situation, where it's maybe at the request of someone in your church, but you're dealing with people who are not Christians. Do you ever get any pushback, or kind of what are some of the difficulties maybe in working through as a Christian with non-Christians because they have a completely different outlook on the situation?
Well, what happens is the purpose of Baby Steps, the book, I'm Diagnosed Now What, is not to really point you in the direction of Christ. It's to help you navigate after being diagnosed with any said diagnosis. So many times I'm going in and I'm just trying to help the person navigate through. If Christ should come up, that's what we discuss. Most times when I'm going to a hospital, they already know I'm a pastor. They already know who I am. Yeah. They've invited me to come in. They know that I believe something. They know that I have some level of faith, which is why they've invited me. It's received well because of why I'm there. Now, this book, of course, is not a Christian resource. However, it's a resource written by a man full of faith. So there's no way you can read my book. There's no way you can open that up and not feel some power of God somewhere along the way without me even saying anything to you. Um,
I don't doubt that for 1 second. Let me ask you this: how much is listening versus talking for you?
Listening is probably 85% of what I do.
Hmm.
I'm sitting in the room, I'm listening. I was at the hospital this morning before coming on to speak with you, and I was just listening. I was listening to the person tell me about their evening, tell me about their pain, tell me about their struggle, tell me about their rehabilitation, tell me about their hopes to get out. And all I'm there to do is, what can I do for you? How can I help? What baby step can we take to make this process easier for you? And that's really what I do. And I speak to it in the book, Randy. I tell people, not only do I tell you to listen, but when I show up, I listen. Because the worst thing that could happen is I go in there and start talking, and that person is not interested in what I have to say.
Yeah.
Which we do often because people have, we think we have the answers. We have the words. So of course we have the answers. Well, not always. Sometimes we have to listen and try to hear what the person is asking us.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Let me ask you about sort of the balance, because you're coming at it from a spiritual perspective. Yes, even if you're not talking the whole time, but most people are coming at it, really just emotionally. What when Christians face a diagnosis, how do we balance what we know is right, in our heads, the spiritual truth, the scriptures, with the emotions that we're feeling in the moment, because they can be completely overwhelming, as you know.
It's a back and forth, Randy. It's really a back and forth. Um, Being diagnosed myself, I remember being diagnosed early September of 2017. And I remember sitting on the couch because it was on a Sunday night when the doctor called me. We had an amazing celebration at church that Sunday. Our pastor dropped an amazing word. Sitting on the couch, just kind of eating dinner, relaxing, talking to my wife. The doctor calls. He gives me this information.
Hmm.
He didn't really want to give me the information over the phone, but he sensed the urgency in getting that removed so that we could move on to the next step. And while I was sitting there, I asked my wife, I was like, "Where's my book?" And she was like, "Your baby steps book? The one you just wrote?" I was like, "Yeah, I need my book because I need to figure out how to get through this emotionally." Because Randy, I just heard the word. So it's
Hmm.
not my faith wasn't charged. I just finished rejoicing. At that point, I needed to figure out, okay, what did I tell other people to do when they get diagnosed? What did I tell other people to do? What was that first step that I told them to take? What was it that I did? And that's when I was like, okay. And the first step I took from an emotional perspective was just to breathe. At that point, Randy, there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
When your doctor tells you, hey, we found this type of cancer in your blood and we need to begin treatment immediately, you don't really have a lot of answers because it's like it just takes your breath away. So what do I suggest? Breathing. Now, am I talking about a clinical type of breathing, 6 breaths in and six? No, 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 no. I'm talking about just sit there and kind of like, okay, okay. So
Yeah.
when you are balancing that emotional part, you kind of understand, okay, emotionally, this is what I'm dealing with. Spirit, I need you to kick in right now and kind of take over where my emotions are starting to try to drag me down.
Yeah.
And how I balance it. And that's how I encourage believers to balance it.
Hmm. That's good. That's really, really good advice, because I've talked to a lot of people who have gone through tremendous suffering, and a lot of them literally say just that. They just have to tell themselves, just breathe, just get through another day, just get through this moment and get through this day, and just keep living, right? I'm going to ask you one of the big questions, and this is a stumbling block for a lot of Christians, or I'm sorry, for a lot of non-Christians, and maybe some Christians too. And that's the big, big question of, why does God allow suffering. So think about that, Pastor Tyrus, just for just a moment. Before you answer that question, though, I want to let people see how they can alleviate the suffering of someone else. Because let's face it, if someone had a terminal diagnosis and you could fix it, you would. Well, a lot of people around the world have a sort of a terminal situation in that they don't have clean drinking water, but we can fix it, and I think we should. So watch this, and we'll be right back with Pastor Tyrus Hinton.
You can save lives when you become a part of Water for Life. Just go to lifetoday.org/live and know that every gift makes a difference. Be sure to request Randy's book, Rise Above, with any gift toward Water for Life.
The situation in many parts of the world is terminal because they don't have clean drinking water, but we provide that. We've been doing this for years. We've been doing it successfully. I've literally been to random villages in parts of the world like Angola and seen the difference that a clean water well makes. So please go to lifetoday.org/live and be a part of that because it's pretty awesome. But back to the big question with Pastor Tyrus Hinton, the author of this book, Baby Steps, I'm Diagnosed, Now What? And that is the problem of pain, as C.S. Lewis put it. Why do you think God allows people to suffer?
You know, Randy, I find that to be interesting. We ask, why do we think God allows people to suffer? But we never, or very rarely, do you hear people ask, why does God allow blessings? Very rarely do you hear people ask, oh, why does God give us what we want? Or why does God give us what we ask for? Or why does God give us the husband or the wife that we ask for? We always question the opposition. Never do we question the favor. And I've had to combat that question a lot, especially with us burying a child, 2 years old. One of my family members he told me how upset he was with God for not coming to see about my son. And I had to remind him of the amount of days that he came to see about my son. And he said, oh, what do you mean? I said, yeah, just like you showed up or didn't show up, you can't get angry with God for making a decision. God is sovereign. He knows just how much we can handle, and he knows just how much we can bear. And that is how I process it. When you say, why does God allow it? Look, if we really want to go biblical, Randy, let's go to the book of Habakkuk, where he raises up the Babylonians and the Chaldeans, and they're warring against each other. And Habakkuk asked the question, Lord, how long shall they fight, and thou not answer? Then Lord answers him and says, listen, write the vision, make it plain, so that he may run and read at the same time. And I'm thinking about that when people are asking that difficult question, why does God allow it? He allows it for our strengthening. I really believe that in my heart. Not only for our strengthening, but so that we'll be able to help others. One thing I know for sure, the experience that my wife and I have had, we have had to walk so many people through the process of not only diagnosis, but then death. I just dealt with this last night on the phone with a dad who just lost his son from leukemia. So when you ask that question, why would God allow suffering? Well, if we were all well, there would never be any death. There would never be any recreation. There would never be anything. We'd all just get old and be here together. But someone has to suffer so that we can share the experience. Someone has to experience it to share and help others. Just like I helped that dad, or I'm helping that dad and walking through the process with him, he's going to have to share his experience and walk another dad through the process and go through it. So I hope that answer helps not only some of our viewers, but it even helped me, again, just talking to you about it right now, because I realized, man, God, you're reminding me again. That's why I had to suffer through it, so that I can help somebody else.
Yeah. When we do go through these things and we have questions and we have pain and we maybe have a little anger towards God, what do you tell people? I know God can handle it, and you know God can handle it. But what do you tell people when they're wanting to express those negative emotions?
Let them do it. Let them do it. My family member was angry. I let him talk. talk. And I didn't listen necessarily to respond. I listened to let him get it off. Let him get it off his chest. Let him express how he feels. And I think sometimes as believers, we have to be very careful, because what we do is we try to argue in God's behalf, and we don't have to. Sometimes you just have to let people express themselves and stand and walk in the truth that you know. We know the truth. We know the truth of the word. We know that if we suffer with him, we'll reign with him. We know that our suffering will lead us to eternal life. We understand that. We know that the Bible tells us that these light and momentary afflictions are just for a moment. We understand all that. We understand that weeping is only going to endure for a night. But to that person that is angry, that does not understand that, I don't think it's a wise idea for Christians to fight that. I think the wisdom is to just listen and, be wise. Use wisdom. There'll be an opportunity for you to speak. Did I answer my family member in that moment of his expressing anger to me? Absolutely not. It took time. It took time. Actually, a couple of years.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I actually did a funeral a little over a year ago, and I talked about the, Psalm 23. Yea, though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And we kind of skip over that sometimes, but you know what? That valley is real, and that shadow is real, but shadows only come when there's a light. And if we keep walking through that valley, walk through it, we will come to the other side. Like you say, weeping lasts for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I'm guessing you experienced some of this as you've had to walk through it more than once.
Oh yeah, it's a shadow, but I love your explanation of it, of that light only shines where God is. Yeah. To me, where God is, and he has to be shining while we're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. We're walking through it. But then the other part of that says we'll fear no evil, right?
That's right.
Because he is with us. His rod, his staff, they both comfort us. So that's the comfort that we have in knowing that we really don't have to argue for God.
Yeah.
He comforts us through it.
Yeah, 100%. And what about the other side of it? Because I know the hardest thing for me since losing my sister was going to her children's weddings where she wasn't there. There's a gap. You call it a new normal. How do we accept that, yeah, things are different after loss, or even after that diagnosis? It's different for you right now because you got to go back every 6 months or whatever and get screened. I mean, there is a breaking of the routine that happens that can be disruptive. What's your take on that?
Wow, routine is broken. So you look at us. We were used to 3 children. Now we're 2 children. At that time, 2 children. Our routine was broken. We had to explain to our other 2 children that your brother's not coming home anymore. Even though he had been in the hospital back and forth, he would always come home. We had to explain, he's not coming home this time. And it's a matter of how you're going to explain. It's your choice words, like with everything else. Wow, okay, so we reserved that seat for him. Okay, hey, this is the seat reserved, but we believe that he is an angel, and we just believe that he's with us in presence, and we choose to focus on laughter, joy, and love. We choose to focus on the good times. Every now and then, we'll break out some of the old videos where all 3 of the kids are little and dancing and playing. We look at pictures. We do things of that nature, because we have to realize that he's not coming back. He's already gained his wings, but we can't get stuck in that moment. So sometimes we do extra things that keep us in a moment that we were supposed to move from. And I'm sure that will sink in with some folks who are watching. We get stuck in a moment, and we're not supposed to get stuck in those moments. We're supposed to deal with the moment and be like, okay, now can I determine how long the moment lasts? No, I don't have that authority. I don't have that power to determine how long the moment lasts. But I can encourage you to do like David did and ask God to make haste to deliver, make haste to get me out of this place. My wife told me after our son passed away, we relocated to another state. And my wife told me she was riding the train one day and said to the Lord she didn't want to cry anymore. I remember her telling me this, and I was like, wow, she told it at the book signing. I said, wow, babe, that's amazing. She said, I just told God I do not want to cry anymore. And she said, and from that moment, it shifted for her. She dried her eyes, and she said the rest of the train ride, she just kept thinking about good times. And that's how she was able to move from that moment. So that's what I would encourage people to do, Randy, to really try to move from that moment. We make it a memorial. We name it. We say, okay, God, this was a tough place of loss, but Lord, help me not to live here.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a place of loss. I want to live in a place of victory.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. People mourn, and they rightly should, but then the mourning stops, and the memories become sweet. That's typically the pattern that I've seen. I know you've seen that. All right, before we go, tell us real quick about the Hinton Cares Foundation for people that want to know.
Oh, wow. Hinton Cares Foundation. So it's a foundation that we began 18 years ago, providing emotional support to families that are experiencing what we experienced during our son's illness. So what we do is we go and we provide care packages to local hospitals, to extended stay facilities. We prepare, I think last year we prepared 24 meals. We fed over 300 families. And we just give away care packages. We provide support, emotional support. We give away books, resources to families that are dealing with pediatric cancer diagnosis. We also serve with the local St. Jude chapter, as well as the American Leukemia Society chapter here in our area. So Hinton Cares is just what it says, Hinton Cares Foundation. We get involved in any way we can to help out as much as we can.
That's awesome. That's available at hintoncaresorganization.org, hintoncaresorganization.org. And Pastor Tyrus Hinton, man, we sure appreciate your time. We appreciate your work and sharing just your words of wisdom. And may your health continue to be good. And we'll just pray and believe with you that you are healed. But we'll also take your words of comfort to know that eventually the ultimate healing is to walk through that gate of death to the other side to live eternally with the Lord. So we appreciate you, man.
Amen. Thank you for having me. It's great.
Thanks for listening. I hope if this is something that touches you, you'll share it with other people wherever you're watching, all the different locations, and come back. Really, this is just a time for me to bring people to you that will encourage you daily, encourage you in your spiritual growth, and even hopefully help with some of the toughest times like today. So thanks for being with me here on Life Today Live. I will see you again next time.